Hey, this is Ralph for the Prineville Chess Club. This video is going to be a little bit different than normal. Um, a little bit ago, about a month or so ago, I played in a tournament in Idaho and kept track of all my games. I'm in the analysis board at chess.com, and something that all the chess websites allow us to do is import an existing game. There's a common file format called a PGN, and I've already recorded that PGN, and I'm going to paste it right into this space on the analysis board. You can just barely see that. And it has information like the date. I did this. This was on March 28th. And this is round 4, even though I don't think that's actual. That's not correct. I don't think I entered. This was actually the first round game against me and Ethan. And it has the opening in here, Scandinavian Defense and things like that, and the result was a draw. And then it's got all the information about the moves that we made. I'm going to go ahead and start the analysis. Now, it gives us all this information here, and what I want to do is I want to kind of go through this game. And I'm happy and a little bit sad about this particular game because it ended in a draw. So I was happy about that. It's always nice to not lose your first game in a tournament. But I missed a good opportunity. And it all comes down to my mental state, my attitude, especially as we're getting close to the end of the game. So I'm going to just press the arrow keys on the board here, and we'll start to see the evaluation. I'm white on this game. So you can see as we move up, the white bar gets a little bit higher, but sometimes it's going to go down a little bit. So far, we're making book moves, and Ethan is responding with the Scandinavian Defense. I can see that right over here too, Scandinavian Defense, and it's pretty typical. Some players do not like this opening as black. It's a black side. We never see defense. That lets you know that it's an opening for black, a response to black, for black. It's not considered, I think, to be one of the top responses, but it is quite popular. And so if you keep playing chess games, and you're going to play white roughly half the time, you do need to be prepared for this particular opening, the Scandinavian Defense. So basically, black is offering up a pawn, which I can take for free. And then they bring their queen out. So this violates a very common principle. Still a book move, by the way. But this breaks a very good principle of don't bring your queen out early. So yes, this brings the queen out early. I challenge the queen with a knight move, developing, challenging that queen. Queen moves off to the side. I develop my bishop. Still a book move. There's actually a couple lines where there's different openings you can do when black just moves their queen to the side. But I'm developing. I'm still keeping an eye on central space for sure. Developing pieces. They bring out a knight to develop. They're challenging, of course, these central squares. Now I develop my knight kind of a funny way. Instead of bringing it off to f3, bringing it out to f3, I bring it out to e2. And this is actually okay in this regard because my bishop is not locked in. I brought my bishop out first, meaning my knight can move here without concern, without risk. Now, what might seem more normal is why not bring the knight out to f3? That's a very normal opening square for the knight. I didn't like that because I saw that black might bring their bishop out and pin my knight. And that was going to cause me a little bit of grief. And now if they bring the knight out, if they bring their bishop out, I've got several options. I can challenge it, kick it away. I can kick it away here with this f-pawn push. I have several different options. And the knight here on e2 supports the knight on c3, which means I can castle pretty soon, and everything is supported, and I'm not worried about getting pinned or anything like that. And I'm starting to develop pretty good central control. Remember, my bishop is looking at some center squares. My knight is looking at some central squares. My other knight on c is looking at more central squares. So I'm starting to feel pretty good about my central control, even though I don't have a pawn presence in the middle. Whereas black, yeah, they've got a knight out and a queen out, but their dark squared bishop is still locked in. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. Now, white does have an advantage at this stage, but it's not like a huge advantage. I'm up 0.4 on the eval bar. They bring their bishop out. I castle. I'm not worried about them taking. I've got plenty of defense with other pieces. So they bring their knight back. Sometimes you will need to move a piece backward, but you need to have a really good reason for it, and I'm not sure what their ultimate motivation is. Now, they may be bringing it back temporarily so that they can land on a more central square, and that's very likely the case. Obviously, if they land on e5, that's going to allow them to target my bishop and start to make a move into the white side. But instead of moving back like that, e6 would have been best for them. So e6 develops a pawn and allows them to bring another piece into the game. Remember, development early on is critical for both sides. The faster you can get developed, then the faster you can castle. The faster you castle, the faster you can start your attack on your opponent's side. And one fast way to develop pieces, like bishops especially, is to get those pawns out of the way. I develop a pawn, and the engine really likes this. My advantage goes up to 2. That's fantastic. And again, I'm targeting this good central control. So even though maybe the end result of this game wasn't what I would have hoped or, wished for, I'm certainly starting off pretty well. They developed that pawn so that their bishop can come out and play. I'm trying to kick away this bishop. It's an okay move. Now I'm starting to threaten the queen, but the engine doesn't like this move. I still have a pretty decent advantage, but they don't like that I focused on this queen over here. And it could be because the queen can easily move away. So what is ultimately my goal with this? What would have been a better move for white in this position? I've got a 2.3, 2.4 advantage going into the game. And I don't think we haven't traded any pieces, right? Yeah, I guess we have a little bit. Yeah, of course, at the beginning, because it's the Scandinavian Defense. So we both have 4 and 7. We both have 7 pawns, pretty good mirrored positions. White is already castled. White is better developed. White has better central space. So white definitely should have the advantage here. What should my next move have been? And I briefly looked at this after the game, but it's been a while. So let's see. Instead of going after the queen, I still have a dark squared bishop that needs to be developed. To e3 perhaps? And I know the engine is off over here to the side, but I am intentionally, whenever I go through an analysis, I always do have those engine lines visible to me. But I do my best not to look over at them and see if I can come up with an alternative move before confirming or learning from the engine to see, oh, I see, I was totally off base, or hey, I guessed right, that kind of thing. So I can see a bishop move being super valuable because it supports my development. And if I can get that bishop out, then pretty soon I can get my queen out, and then I can have my rooks connected, and that's all good stuff for sure. Yeah, so I would guess that it would be a bishop development move. And I can see value to bringing it to this d2 square to point at the queen. That's going to kind of force it to move because it doesn't want to get a discovered attack on it. I can see moving my bishop to e3 to kind of support the center and also fill in this little weakness that I made by pushing my f-pawn. So I can see a couple of ideas. Let's check what the engine is looking at. Notice in the top 3 engine lines, bishop move is none of them. So I didn't guess very well on this one. What do they suggest? g4. Ah, I think I recall this. I don't know if I'm gutsy enough to make these kinds of moves. But the best move is g4. Pushing the pawns in front of my king, which is usually frowned upon. You very rarely want to do that. But if I push the pawns in front of my king, I'll be attacking this bishop, and their bishop is going to be forced to move away. Bishop g6 is the next best move for black. And then I would do f4. Okay? So I would be pushing this pawn, and I'm threatening to start to trap their bishop up here. That's pretty scary for me because my king is going to be kind of exposed. But we need to learn that, yeah, sometimes it's okay because the squares around my king are still pretty much protected. So just kind of imagine this for a moment. Push this pawn, bishop goes back, push this pawn. Advantage is still quite good, 2.6, that's very good. And my king is still relatively safe. There's no easy, quick attack on it. This bishop can't come here because of my pawn. The queen can't really attack it effectively because of that pawn. So it is kind of risky, but it's also smart to go on the offensive here. And in this game, I definitely didn't go on the offensive. Yeah, so they would respond with knight a6. Wow. So knight a6, intentionally bringing their knight to the edge of the board. That's pretty rare. But that's their best move. Notice their best move gives me even more of an advantage. That's pretty good when your opponent's best move still helps you. So yeah, their best move would have been to bring that knight out there if I start with this attack. And then I would respond with f5, just threatening even more this bishop. So interesting point there. So let me go back. They take. Oh, yeah. This is the other reason this is an inaccuracy, right? Here we go. I'm threatening the queen here, but look what I've done. My a3 pawn is pinned. Pinned pieces can't move. So black can easily take this pawn, and I can't take it back. If I were to try to take back this bishop, they get my rook for free. And so they are going to be up the exchange if that happens. So as soon as my opponent does this, I realize, oh crap, I can't take that bishop. So I just lost a pawn because I didn't consider my opponent's responses to my move. And by the way, these are long games. I think the time controls were, yeah, I think it's like minimum of 90 minutes. You had like, you could make 40 moves within 90 minutes, and then you, or maybe it was even 2 hours, and then you would get another 30 minutes added to your clock after 40 moves. None of my games was I getting low on the clock. I was not getting low on the clock on this game, so I can't even say I felt rushed as an excuse. Yeah, just an oversight. So yeah, I couldn't take back, so I did something else. But look at this. My advantage has dropped down. The game is pretty much even now because I brought this bishop out instead of the better move. Is the better move still focusing on this bishop? You know what? The engine is saying A takes B4 is still the best move. A takes B4 maintains that advantage. So if black takes my rook, Oh my gosh, my advantage is even better. All the more reason that I should have taken time, right? Wow. Okay. So even if I wasn't worried about that pin, this is where you need to calculate and kind of start to predict moves. I don't think I would have gotten this. This looks really subtle. And even here, even though queen has done this, I probably wouldn't have guessed that white still has a tremendous advantage in this game. Queen d2. I'm looking at the engine move on here because I just don't have a good guess. Now, I guess I can see the value of getting the queen off of this line and potentially having a discovered attack on the black queen, because as soon as I move this bishop to some logical way, of course, I still think I would have moved it up higher so that my bishop could slide out further. And then bishop g6. Bishop g6 is still an advantage to white of 2.84. Again, black's best move is still great for white. Bishop g6. And then bishop a2. Trapping the black queen. The queen can't take this bishop because it's protected by the knight. The queen can't move up here because it's protected by the bishop. The queen can't move to b1 because it's protected by this bishop. Yeah, the queen is starting to get stuck. The queen is effectively out of the game. And then knight b6. Oh, that's black's move. Queen g5. Starting an attack. Yeah, it's as if white is no longer even concerned about this queen over here. It can't do anything. Now, I know in this analysis I'm looking at the engine lines a little bit more than I normally would, because I feel like I've already learned some key pieces of information from this game, and I never like to overwhelm myself and try to pick up 7 different key points and lessons. It's really just focusing on a couple things and then see if we can kind of, I don't know, dial in to what is really the thing that kept me from doing better in this game than I did. Now, I still don't know if I would have seen all of this. It's not like that it's complicated, but I don't have those calculation skills. I need to get better at calculating 3, 4, 5 moves deep and not being so quick to react to what I think is the opponent's best move, a winning move. But definitely deeper calculation, taking more time would have benefited me here. Now I'm going to go ahead and back up to here. I'm going to advance a little bit further based on what we did do. There we go. Game is now in black's favor, by the way. Just kind of moving through. I'm looking at this evaluation bar. It's gone from white having a tremendous advantage to black having a tremendous advantage. And not that there's not good learning opportunities in these latter parts of the game, these deeper into the middle game. But I really want to get closer to the ending and show you a really big fatal flaw of mine. Okay, let's look at this real quick. Yeah. I took in the center. Game is pretty much even. I'm just looking over at the evaluation bar. Black took this pawn, which makes sense at first. Well, not really. They've got 1, 2, 3 attackers. That's true. And how many defenders do I have? I have a bishop and a rook. So normally when you see a situation like this, the side with more attackers is going to win. But I saw some interesting opportunities by getting this queen lined up. By moving my queen over here to g3, I now have 3 attackers on this knight. And black only has 2 defenders. I'm adding more of an attack, but game goes back to drawn again. Now, where are we at? So at some point, not here, I guess, but at some point, I do offer my opponent a draw in the game, and he declines. And I can't remember exactly where it was. Not here. You know, we played on a little bit more. I've got quite the advantage. It was really just a couple moves later. And, however, I think we can get to a point pretty soon here. Was it in here? Yeah. I think roughly in this situation. So we're around move 31, and the game only went to 37 moves, basically. So we're getting near the ultimate end of this game. And the game is drawn. Notice it's 0.00. It is a drawn game. And I felt like I saw this, and I felt like I didn't have any chance for winning. And I think it was at this point that I offered a draw to my opponent, and they declined. And that happens sometimes. If one person feels the game is drawn or they can't win, they may offer a draw. And then the other player gets to respond with yes, and you shake hands, or they'll say no, and you'll continue to play. So my opponent continued to play, but in my head, I have already prepared for a draw. All I could see was getting out of this game even. And so one way you can draw your opponent is by doing what's called a perpetual check. And if you check them, if you can keep checking their king, and especially if you repeat the position 3 times, that's an automatic draw, whether the other player wants it or not. So I check. It's a forced move on the king. Of course, I can't just take this rook. It looks like it's a free rook, because after I do that, black has a back rank checkmate. So I knew I was close to getting checkmated if I didn't do something right away. So I check again. King moves to another place, but look at this white advantage. 4.3. So the game has gone from even to now white has a tremendous advantage again. I didn't see this tremendous advantage. I check again. Advantage is still there. Best move, or great move actually. They respond. I check again. Best move. But still, in my head, I'm thinking check, 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 draw. I want the draw. I don't even appreciate that the game has changed one bit. Now, we're at move 34. Missed opportunity. All I'm thinking in my head is check, check, check. It wasn't until later that night when I was reviewing this game that I saw, well, now I can take their rook. And that's a checking move. So if I can take the rook with check, that would have been a huge advantage. Did not see it at all. I check again, because that's my mentality at this point. King moves away. I check again, but I check in the wrong spot. And of course, the game goes back to draw, and I think it's just a couple moves later where I'm just going to prove to my opponent that I'm just going to keep checking you, and then they did accept that this was a drawn position. And of course, the evaluation bar shows that it's a drawn position. But if I can back up a little bit, this is a fork. I'm checking the king, attacking the rook. That would have been the better way to go. So definitely some learning opportunities in this game, right? And it's not that, I don't want to say, it's not that the mistake was making the wrong move. The mistake was not looking ahead, not taking the time to look at all of my checks, captures, and threats. So that was the big takeaway for me for this particular game. If you have time on the clock, and that's what's great about long games, if you have time on the clock, use time. Nothing wrong with it. Some players will take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes looking at a single chess move. And at a glance, that might sound pretty annoying to be your opponent sitting there and waiting, but it could be a critical moment. It could be the difference between a loss, a draw, or a win. So this was a drawn game. We both got a half point towards the tournament standings, but it could have easily been a win for white. Take care.